Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar. We're going to be doing something a little bit different today. Introduce myself. My name is Lloyd Farnsworth. I'm Director of Sales at DIS, Dealer Information Systems, longtime provider of software to the equipment marketplace. And instead of having slides and running through presentation type modes for you this morning, we're going to do a very informal discussion, a little bit of interview, just a little bit of open topic. And my special guest this morning is John Anderson. A little bit of background I should have provided from my side. I've been in the equipment dealership realm for 14 years plus. John's been in it a lot longer, and I wanted to let him introduce himself since we've crossed paths many times over the last decade plus. And again, very happy to have John join us. So John, tell us a little bit about your background and what we're going to talk about today.
Well, that was very polite. You could have just led with "I'm old," and that'd be a good place to go. And I'll say good afternoon because I'm on the Eastern time zone. But thank you for having me, Lloyd. Just to kind of give you a brief background, I've been doing this with specifically heavy equipment distributors for going on 35 years now. And I would say on and off, but it's one of those industries that you can't really step away from. I mean, once it's in your blood and once you know the people and once you know what's happening, it's really hard to step back and do anything different. So I started, my original role was actually installing dealership management systems for a company called PFW. I enjoyed what I did, and when PFW was ready to expand and their existing ownership was kind of reluctant to take it into the marketplace, I got together with some good partners and we bought the company, and we rode that out for probably about 20 years, growing heavily into the ag market, heavily into the construction market. And then we managed an acquisition by ADP, later to become CDK, and we helped through both of those transitions. Then I left and went home to take care of some personal matters and reintroduce myself to my family. But like I said, you step away, they drag you right back in again. So I had the good fortune to work with E-Emphasis, and I was there for probably almost 2 years, and then once again came home to look after family issues, and was sitting quietly and got a phone call from DIS, very familiar with DIS, and had done some work with them in the early 2000s when we would be working with case dealers as PFW and DIS were working together. So I was really familiar with the industry, and that's kind of how I ended up. That's kind of how I ended up here right now. Sorry, my screen just took a weird view on my side. So that's how I started with. That's how I came to be at DIS. You and I, of course, we've worked at different companies and either with each other or for each other, or but always enjoyed it. So an interesting marketplace. That's who I am. That's why I'm here. And I like to think of myself as a free-spirited thought provoker. I like to be a little bit of a provocateur and trying to get people to see things a little differently in the construction equipment and agricultural equipment market than just doing the same old, same old. So how's that?
No, it's great. And I mean, yes, we've crossed paths and worked together so many times. It's funny over the years. So I always appreciate your expertise. And you wanted us to title this webinar "Building Blocks for Dealer Success." So I kind of have to ask you, where did that come from? Why that title?
Well, so the challenge, Lloyd, is everybody, if you talk to a dealer, and I got to tell you, as an independent consultant, everyone has the same basic want. How can I make my dealership better? How can I make more money? How can I be more efficient? How can I be, more profitable? Whatever the criteria is, there is no silver bullet answer in the dealership market space right now. We're dealing with an extremely mature market. Most dealers that exist right now have been in existence for decades, and that's very normal, given that. My dog agrees. That's very normal in a mature market like this, especially when there's not continuous innovation, new products, complete new players coming into the market. So there is no real silver bullet to walk in there and say, hey, if you do this, this is a brand new dealership. This is the way it's going to look, and this is going to change it. The disruptors are small and they're incremental. So we're really looking at incremental change in the dealership. So I refer to it as building blocks. You've got a solid foundation. If you're still in business, given the last 20 years of what's happened in this industry, up, down, consolidation, deconsolidation, economic challenges, everything that's happened, if you're still in business, you're running a good dealership. I mean, let's be honest. It's not easy to exist, what you got to look at now is how do you fine tune? What are those small incremental changes you can make that essentially are like a foundation with building blocks on top of them, and build yourself up. So I think every year we're coming up to the show season, and every year somebody comes up to a booth and says, is this going to change my world? The software doesn't change your world. What changes your world are these smaller incremental changes. And a lot of these building blocks have less to do about the software and what the software actually does, and more to do about how you choose to use the software, what you expect to do with the software every day. So it's as much as a user thought than anything else.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head, because at the end of the day, software is a tool. It is not the be all end all.
Correct. And until you take responsibility for being a master craftsman and using the tool the way that it's designed, or in some cases using it beyond what it was designed for, that's where you really make the difference in terms of building something that somebody else hasn't. Because let's face it, we all have the same inventory to work with. We all have the same products to work with. We all have two hands and two legs to be able to do what we're going to do. It's how you choose to exploit the tools that you've got.
No, that makes total sense. And I mean, for all the years that I've been in software, both dealers and prior, you will always find two different dealers that use identical software packages differently. And one will get an awful lot more value out of that software than a neighboring dealer in another state. And it comes down to how they're choosing to use that tool and almost implement a process in their dealership, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know this from having done this for a lot of years. The first question you get from a dealer is we think we're using 100% of the software, or how do we use 100% of the software, and how can we maximize what we're using the software? In my career with all software manufacturers, DIS included, I have yet to find a single dealer that is using every piece of that software and using everything that it's capable of doing. To me, it's always been, a good dealer is using 60% of the capability of the software. Most are using 50% of it, and maybe
you're right, because all softwares are developed to have some ability to customize to unique dealerships. So by definition, nobody can be using 100% of the software, because there's certain elements that have been customized to match certain OEMs or certain dealership organizations. So it makes total sense.
And I think it also comes down to the dealership's mission statement too. Some people want to be, strive for different areas of excellence and expertise.
Also true. Areas of focus. So yes. Now, speaking of which, as we go back to our core assumption for our conversation here, when you talk about building blocks, and you mentioned foundation, what is the core building block or the core basis for the foundation on which to build anything for dealership?
So, at the risk of being Captain Obvious, I think the one thing that kind of always gets overlooked, but it is so absolutely crucial and critical, is the fact that you need to be customer centric. And I always think it's really interesting to have a meeting, and I've been in dealerships and gone through their management meetings and helped with annual reviews. I've done it with software companies. I've done it with construction and ag dealers. And I'll usually get out a pen and paper, and I'll start tallying the number of times somebody uses the word customer. Either customer in generic terms, or actually mentions a customer by name. Because I think it's really interesting. And if all the dealers that are listening think to themselves right now, how often do you really put the customer first in everything that you do. And customer-centric is probably that center building block. And it could be as simple as an all-hands meeting, getting everybody together and reminding them that that dealership only exists. And Lloyd, your business only exists. My business only exists to serve customers. If I don't have customers, I don't have a business. It's that rudimentary. But as the business grows and as we get busier and as we have more and more things to follow up on and more details to look after, we become less and less conscious of the fact that we're customer centric. And I really think you need to that needs to go from the software. It needs to go through the people, and it needs to be in every communication that you have with the customer on a regular basis. I'll give you a good example. I went to get my wife's coffee this morning at Starbucks. And it's pretty simple to order off of a mobile app. And in most cases, I don't even have to see anybody because I just kind of sneak in the front door and grab it and leave. And occasionally they'll yell good morning and I'll yell back as I'm headed out the door. What's really interesting is doing that, I've had a minimum of 4 contacts with people like Starbucks. Thank you for your order. The barista is making your order today or now. Your order is ready to be picked up. I hope everything was satisfactory, and in some cases I'll even get a tip request later that comes by email. But that's purchasing a $5 cup of coffee. So when you look at it from a dealer's perspective, what do most dealers do to acknowledge, recognize, and over communicate with their customers? And this is truly a case of over communication. But again, I can tell you historically, I've never heard anybody come and say, please stop updating me. Right. Please stop keeping me informed, right? I mean, they want that. And like it or not, dealers are going to have to realize that the market is changing underneath them and their business is going to shift dramatically in the next 2 years. As we start bringing on more and more AI, as the expectations change on the customer, as we start looking at increased automation, as we start looking at doing things like you and I are doing, video calls, I'd like to think, among other things, we're friends, but we probably haven't physically seen each other in 8 or 10 years, 8 years at least. So it's one of these cases of unless you're actively keeping track of what's coming down the road, your customers are going to dictate how you change. And let me give you an example, because we have a benchmark. All of us have a benchmark. Nobody wants to admit it. When I was younger, the benchmark, believe it or not, was Walmart, because they were this big, scary company that was going to come in and put all the little businesses, out of business. There'd be no more boutique operations. Everything would be bought by Walmart. And to a certain degree, I think that happened. I think they drove efficiency and they taught people, how to be competitive in a market space. Not all positive, but there's always positive if you look for it. I think we're seeing the same thing today with Amazon. Like it or not, your benchmark today is Amazon. If I see something on a YouTube video, or I happen to catch something in a magazine or on a multimedia publication, the first thing I do to figure out whether I can get it or how much it costs, I go look it up on Amazon. And if Amazon doesn't have it, then I start scratching my head, because how legit can it be if Amazon doesn't have it? Is it that new that it hasn't been on there yet, or is it that much of a scam that I haven't seen it? So that communication with Amazon, again, over-service the customer, a model that nobody thought would work. Returns, no questions asked. Now that's starting to change a little bit.
Yeah, that's not the same anymore.
Yeah, but that's how it started. So that's not to say that a good idea doesn't always start as a great idea. But returns, satisfaction guarantees, ease of communication. People my age don't really like to do a whole lot of texting and emailing back and forth. But when I go on Amazon and I have a question, I put out the text and they say, we'll call you back. And, literally within 3 or 4 minutes, somebody's on the phone calling me to walk through the problem. So I'm sorry, I've got off on it, but customer centric. So in a dealership, what is the dealership doing to be that customer centric? Are you that communicative with your customers?
No, it makes total sense. And yes, there are people changing the paradigms. And the most dangerous assumption, I guess, what you're telling us is that a dealership can make, don't make the assumption that because Amazon's ubiquitous, your example, Starbucks is ubiquitous, that everybody is experiencing for the most part, don't think that those expectations don't roll over to the dealership's customers regarding the dealership, that they're going to have that same level of expectation.
Well, they do. I mean, I'm telling you right now, and we all know that those expectations are rolling over to the dealership. But the other challenge is, where did a dealership traditionally have their customers? And most of their customers are multi-generational. So they've had customers, they've never had to worry about their customers before, because either they were the local case dealer or they were the local Kubota dealer. And my father used them and my grandfather used them and I used them. But that market is shifting now too, because the question is, they can get parts somewhere else. If they can find somebody that's easier to deal with, it's going to make it easier to deal with. There are other forces at work beyond just what's happening in the equipment market space to be able to do that.
No, makes sense. And that could be anything from hours of operation. Somebody's trying to grab a part for something at 10 o'clock at night and their dealership's closed, right? Then they're going to go to wherever they need to online to find it and purchase it.
Well, I know you didn't ask for it, but I'm going to give you a whole different, I'll give you a whole different building block, because one of the ones that I talked about, and I did get a little flack for it, and that's okay, was when we were talking about stocking inventory and different ways to stock inventory and how you build a better dealer. And if it's a building block, should you be reevaluating your stocking criteria? And I would put forth to the parts managers, and I'd have I'd be interested in knowing how many of them have really revisited their stocking criteria. And I don't mean fine tuning it. I mean, gone right back and said, is this the best way to stock parts? Because you've been stocking those parts in that particular format for 10 years, for 15 years, or for 20 years. You know, if you're a case dealer, you used Availability Max, has a formula that runs through it. John Deere has OFC codes that run through it. You know, there's Poisson methods, there's min-max, everybody goes through that. But all that was predicated on a world that looked entirely different than it does right now. And again, I'll use Amazon as a perfect example. I ordered it today, the screen will come back, I hope. I ordered it today, and all of a sudden it'll show up on my doorstep, you know, in 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours. It used to be when you were ordering parts for a tractor, you put it on a weekly stock order and it'd show up here next week. Otherwise, it was called a machine down order. Logistics has changed so dramatically now that if I've got my order in by 3 o'clock, I can have the part in my hand by 7 o'clock the next morning. That becomes a question, and this is where I got in trouble. I'm not suggesting don't stock anything, but this is where an experienced parts manager has to say that the paradigm has shifted. Here's a new building block. My building block in this case is I have logistics that I never had before. I need to reevaluate how I'm ordering parts. Best way to do that? Use a business system. The best way to do that.
But and then just devil's advocate, there are certain parts, for example, especially any dealer in construction that's got service trucks, you can't send a service truck out without having parts necessary to fix it on your shelf.
I agree, but innovation doesn't necessarily mean radicalization either, right? So, and I think that's where people take these ideas and they go, oh, too radical, I can't change my entire, I'm not asking you to change your business. I'm asking you to rethink your business. So let's talk about being data-driven. Let's talk about using tools like analytics to go through and say, you know, here's the top 500 parts that I get demand for, that I can have within 24 hours, that have a relatively high value and cost me money to stock, right, to have an inventory. You can start to run those question marks and do a little data mining, do a little data analysis to come back and say, okay, so what's my criteria now for changing my stocking codes on those parts? I'm not suggesting don't stock anything. I think that's where people took it around. Don't stock fast-moving parts. Don't stock as many fast-moving parts because the logistics has changed.
Understood. And so to answer the problem I just put forth to you, you're saying that yes, because those parts are needed for critical repairs, it's yes, you're always going to have them on the shelf. But instead of stocking what traditionally was, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 of a given part, to worry about all those situations, but across, you know, over-the-counter customer or service truck repair, you're saying, look, if I can get it overnight, I might only need 2 or 3 on the shelf.
Exactly. And if nothing else, the pandemic taught us that. Mm-hmm. The pandemic taught us that we could get by with 6 rolls of toilet paper. No, I'm not making a joke, until we hit some global turmoil. Well, in the instances, you're going to be the same way in the dealership. you can probably get by with a quantity of 6 of some fast-moving parts. You don't have to overstock and stockpile the bathroom full of toilet paper.
Well, but the other challenge we've had up until the last 6 to 12 months maximum, but you go back into a year to 2.5 years ago, and we had supply chain issues worldwide coming out of the pandemic where things weren't available. And so dealers were actually doing the opposite, say, hey, you know what? If I can get this part, I better get more of them because I've got a broken supply chain.
And, you know, again, you and I will keep going back and forth because you can play the devil's advocate, and I'll tell you the same thing. The money that I'm saving by not stocking unnecessary parts that aren't going to be constricted by the supply chain, I can use to better pad my inventory with those items that are critical and hard to get and are subject to supply chain issues too.
Okay.
So, you know, I guess the underlying piece in here that I would add too, if somebody was listening and said, okay, these two guys are going to go on forever, the message is be nimble too. I mean, be prepared to rethink what you're doing, because I think one of the questions and one of the key building blocks to building a successful dealership right now is to ask yourself, am I doing this because this is the way it needed to work 20 years ago, or this is the way that it needs to work today?
Okay, that's a valid question.
We can talk specifically about you know, DIS programs like Notify, and we can talk specifically about you know, some of the other product lines and some of the other verticals using things like Target CRM, and we talk about Starbucks and Amazon and their communication methods. You know, somebody asked me the other day, what's your email? I had to think what my email is, because 95% of the communication that I do back and forth as a private individual, not as a business, but as a private individual, is done from text. And again, you've seen the automotive industry. You drop your car off, they don't send you an email anymore. You drop your car off, they send you a text to your cell phone because they know it's immediate and it gets taken care of. So, and that's not new technology. I'm just saying this is why you got to understand it. Is what you're doing because the way that you've always done it, or has business changed enough in the last 20 years that you shouldn't be sending statements anymore? I mean, I'd just be curious, and I'll do this over the next 6 months. When I talk to dealers, I'll ask each one of them, are they still sending out statements? I would guess, Lloyd, I'll ask you for your number after mine, but I would guess that probably somewhere between 50 and 60% of dealers are still printing out and sending statements to customers.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Yes.
You know, and I got to tell you, I might be the exception here, but I haven't gone to the mailbox in the last 6 days. So I mean, I'm a once every week, once every 2 weeks to the mailbox to get the mail. And it's not because I live in the Great White North, it's because I'm lazy and I don't want to walk there. But if you send your statement to me electronically, first of all in an email, and because I don't even check my email, you should probably send me a reminder notice by text. That's the kind of thing. So back to building blocks again, right? I think I said in a podcast not that long ago, it's time to take the toy box, dump them all out on the floor, and see what you've got and what you can build with it and how you can play. Because the problem is you're just using the same old script and the same old tools at the top of the toy box because that's the way you've always done it for the last 20 years.
Right. No, makes sense. And you've talked, well, we've hit on a whole bunch of different things from inventory to customer-centric. But when we're talking about building blocks, what other unique, not so obvious element of change should dealers be thinking about?
You know, the first one that comes to mind is hours of operation. You know, the expectation now is to be able to see people on your schedule when you want, or be able to have communication and have communication schedules when you want. So while it appears obvious, I think you're going to see in the next year to year and a half, and of course you're aware of some of the projects that are going on at DIS, you're going to be dealing with a virtual dealership that essentially doesn't close the doors, so that you can order parts when you order them, you can look up parts when you need to look them up, you can schedule your own work orders and pickups, and you're going to see that grow and increase again with the use of AI right now. there's going to be the opportunity for AI agents to take over a lot of what were the mundane tasks that had to be done between 9 and 5. So it's not, I have to call the dealership before 5 o'clock to find out whether I can pick up my combine in the morning. In the construction side, I think we've started to see more and more dealers going to a 24/7 operation, just because in some of the major metropolitan areas, you can't be without a machine. It's that simple. So I think it's critical that you start to uncover those pieces. I have said forever, Lloyd, that the hidden gold mine in every dealership, and I'm surprised you're not smiling, because they're sitting on a gold mine. I say it every time we talk.
I know where you're heading.
And every dealership that's been in existence for the last 10 years is sitting on their single greatest investment, and they're not utilizing it to their maximum potential. And that greatest investment is the data that they're sitting on, the data elements that they have. I talked to a former CDK exec today, and he's working for another company that just specializes in tracking data elements and finding out where they were. I read a blog post from a guy this morning who is a data engineer. So he's really talking about using the power of analytics to go through the data, and he was talking about specifically to a customer. So it's one of those hidden building blocks, and just one of those things that dealers aren't paying attention to, that they really need to grab hold of, is if I want to stick my head in the sand, that's one thing. If I want to stick my head in the data mine, I'm going to come out with a whole different way to run my business and a whole bunch of different things that mean something to me. And if you don't know how to do it and you're scared to do it, I get it. I feel the same way every time I log on to Facebook. What am I going to see? What am I going to do? I don't know. I don't belong here. This isn't my area of expertise. Hire somebody or get with somebody local, younger, to be able to do that. If you want, find a high school, university co-op program where you can bring somebody in who will look at using some of these new tools. You can pay peanuts for them and get them on a demo basis, just to understand what you have in the data of your existing business system. Go to your business system supplier. Using something like an analytics program and saying, okay, what's my opportunity to look for something that I haven't seen? Give them a challenge of something that's not, a traditional, I need my AR by 30, 90, and 120. I'd like to have my AR by product line. I would like to know that people who carry product line B and product line C pay faster than people who carry product line A. That affects my overall profitability, right? I mean, it's a strange way to connect the dots. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe the answer is look for new ways to connect the dots.
That makes sense. And as you've talked about some of the new paradigms and in looking after customers and business hours, it would make sense that you're going to have to look for new ways to, for lack of a better phrase, crunch the data you're sitting on.
Oh yeah, and then be prepared that once you crunch the data, you're going to give it to somebody that's not a data junkie. I don't know. You might see the screen behind me. That's not even a joke. This is stuff that we track for servers and finding, what's working where and how much power is being used and things that are going on. That's great. I'm a data junkie. What if your dealer principal's not a data junkie? What if your dealer principal's only interested in X and Y? And I can tell you Y is dollars. I'm not sure what X is, but X will relate to dollars. That's where you've got tools today like advanced analytics and some of the graphical representations of data. High visibility data analytics that you can show to somebody in an instant. They can go, oh, I like to see that. I like to see that. And then you rely on, go ahead.
No, so while, and that's also, we were talking about specialized filters on that data. So you're looking at the top criteria of certain elements that matter the most to you.
Right. You've known me for 20 years, right?
Yep.
I have the attention span of a gnat. If you give me 60 lines to read, I'll read the top 4 and the bottom 3. The rest in the middle are just noise. I don't think I'm unique that way. I think you'll find there's a quantity of people that have a certain quality of analytics that they do mentally that says, okay, I'm automatically going to knock the tops off and clean up the bottom, knowing that the middle will take care of itself. In the dealership, you have to consciously do that every day. And I think that the problem is so many of these dealerships are just running on autopilot.
Yeah, and to your point, and I've heard you say this over the years successfully, and I'm just paraphrasing. If you think that the dealer business is going to be the same 12 months from now, and then I've heard you list off a whole bunch of factors, multiple different types of dealers, that are all things that have changed in the last 6 months for them. Meaning, guess what? If all this has changed in the last 6 months, the point you're always driving home to dealers is, what's going to change in the next 12 that you haven't anticipated?
I could give you half a dozen references right now of things that 12 months ago had virtually no impact on the marketplace, that now are just changing what we do every day. It's funny because things that you take for granted right now, and you've heard me mention it 5 times so far in this discussion, and I'm not done. We talk about AI and the things that AI are capable of. It's probably worth bringing up that we're at 1 year and 4 months right now. We're talking about something that isn't 2 years old yet, and it's been so pervasive into everything that we do. And the exponential growth and the exponential use and ramp up is off the charts. What we're going to see in the next 1.5 years is going to make it look like we're on the slow uphill of a roller coaster right now. So I tell people all the time, buckle up. You don't necessarily have to change, but boy, you have to have your seatbelt on and your eyes wide open, because when that change comes by, you're going to have to decide whether you're going to grab it or not.
No, that makes sense. And we talked about, and I know we're probably getting close a little bit to a bit of a time limit from our side, and I wanted to kind of pull it back. We've talked about a whole bunch of different items to change or elements of change for a dealership. What do you see that's common amongst all of them, in your professional opinion?
About making the changes, they all require one thing, Roy.
Okay.
And this every one of them requires, well, more than one thing, but there is some common elements. The first one is it requires change. And having been here forever, and go back and I challenge anybody.
Willingness to change.
What's that?
A willingness to change.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're going to find out when we go back and we look at the dealerships. Is there's a reason that dealerships haven't changed. It's not because they don't know that they need to. It's not because they can't see the benefit of it. It's because the pure willingness. Because change is difficult. Change takes thought. Change takes effort. Change takes change takes a set of skills to be able to say, okay, I'm prepared to adopt it. So I think that's part of it. I think that's probably the biggest part. I would challenge dealer principals, small dealerships, large dealerships, to understand that they've hired good people, and give those good people the opportunity to reflect on what the business is going to look like going forward. If you've been in the business 20 years, I want to talk to somebody who's been in the business for 2 years, because they're not carrying 18 years worth of baggage that I have with me. And old guys like me like to argue that's 18 years of extremely valuable experience. You have heard me say this to you several times. I'll say it to everybody that's on the phone. I'm not the smartest, most successful person that I've ever met to do this, but I will tell you, I have made more mistakes than the average person and managed to survive most of them. And I really think that's the secret to the success, is to be able to have those mistakes, make those mistakes, continue to work with the dealership. IBM had a phrase at one point that was fail fast. So if it didn't work, let's decide it didn't work and we'll go ahead. I mean, they even admitted to failure before we started, but they knew what they were going to take away from that failure. And I think the same thing exists in dealerships. So the commonality is top down. You need to be ready to implement change, and what you say will obviously be picked up by everybody underneath you. The other thing is, understand that you're dealing in an extremely mature market. 2 things happen when you get mature: you get old and irrelevant, or you change. And I'm my dog's giving me critique as we go. I refuse to get old and irrelevant, so I'm just prepared to change as we go.
Yeah, no, and I think I'll add one commentary that I've seen. The dealers that do change effectively are consistent across all levels to support that change. So they'll lead it from the top, they'll say, and then middle managers are on board for it, explain it to all the people, the associates that are doing a lot of the day-to-day work, and make it consistent all the way through all levels. That's what I've seen to make it work.
Exactly, but unfortunately, what I explained about the way that I look at data is the way the dealerships work too at the same time. The people at the bottom are looking for change, and the people at the top can embrace change. It's that middle piece that we need to really get our hands on. So if you're the middle piece, I'm talking to you. This is how it's going to end up. You're either going to become old or irrelevant, or start to embrace change now, because there's going to be a lot of it. And it doesn't need to be radical change. It just needs to be awareness, and call it awareness. I'm sorry about that.
No, I think you're having somebody there trying to drive awareness that it's lunchtime for her or something like that. But you know, from our side, I mean, we've hit it on a whole bunch of different topics and concepts. The closing question I always wanted to ask you, and I mean, it's always a different answer every few months, because that's what you're always doing. You're always looking at the horizon. What do you see today on the horizon that dealerships should be paying attention to?
So I'll go so big as I don't even think it's dealerships. I think it's the population needs to be aware of, and this is a new one because I don't think you and I have talked about it extensively. The ability for AI agents to fundamentally change what we're doing right now. And when I say AI agents, those are AI-based automated tasks that can happen. We see it in social media. We see it on YouTube. We see it on just surfing the web. Everything we do is being hyper analyzed. All that data is going through, and there are AI agents specifically designed to respond to what you're doing. So my concern going forward for dealers is, if you talk to your customers once a month, or you talk to your customers once every 2 months, or I don't know what the hit list is. Lloyd, you've been a sales manager forever, so you call them key contacts, right? I have to talk to my A customers, B customers, and C customers. Dealers are no different. The challenge is, through the use of AI agents, they're going to have a better idea of what customers to talk to. And because it takes almost no work for them to do it, it doesn't take a physical human interaction to do it. The contacts with customers are going to be, it's going to be by brute force. So you're really going to be a David and Goliath battle, based on the fact that they're going to have all the information, they win. How does this affect you as a dealership? If the dealership in the next county over is starting to embrace technology, and it's figured out how to contact customers every morning, Monday morning, and wish them a happy Monday morning, and find out what their needs are for the week, and promise that they'll be there Friday night with beer and coffee, it's going to affect you on the other side. Was it a real person? I don't know. I have that question regularly. I mean, I get some pretty interesting interactions and emails right now that leave me scratching my head. Did I talk to a real person, or was I somehow caught in somebody's algorithm, and I just gave them more information that they don't need? I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Just, this is how radically different the world is changing right now.
No, I totally get it. And
is that the answer you expected?
Partially. I knew it was going to be AI related with you. That was it. And I don't know if there's any other closing comments you have from your side for us, and for anybody that's going to watch the webinar to take away from what we've been talking about.
I do not, but as you can tell, I'm getting a boatload of emails, so I'm sure I upset somebody with a comment through here, or there are questions, but they're coming into my emails. So they can get in touch with me through you. What's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
Well, and that's what and I'm not the best technical person here. I'm going to try to actually see if this will work. Hopefully this is going to work. Well, that was partially it. Let's go back one. You are hopefully seeing the contact us screen.
I am.
Okay, so that actually worked. That's good. So from our side, it's pretty clear to reach out to us on any questions, comments, suggestions for future webinars, all of that. Please just reach out to us, and either me or one of my team will certainly respond to anybody on that side. So from anything else, I don't think that there is anything else I can add.
Okay, I'm gonna leave you 3 thought points. Contact with your dealers. If you want product names, talk to Lloyd. Notify is one of them. Understand who you're selling to and why you're doing the things you're doing. You want product names? Start looking at analytics. Start mining the data that you have there, and change. That's a really perfect opportunity to contact whoever your business system supplier is and say, okay, so tell me what's new. Get to your local rep and have him tell you something that GIS is providing or doing that you're not using, and evaluate whether you use it in your business. Don't just assume because this is the way we've always done business that we're using all of the best tools available. So, you want to call to action, what's my hot buttons? Those are the ones that I would go after. So really talk about how you're going to communicate with the customers, how you're going to slice and dice your data. You're on a gold mine. If you don't want that data, feel free to give it all to me. Because I can make money with that. And the last one is seek change. Don't wait for change to seek you. So get with you have territory reps. Do they have business reps that contact them, Lloyd?
Yeah, we've got multiple different reps on by geography, by multiple different scenarios. So yes.
Perfect. So get with that rep and seek out change. Find out what's new. What am I missing? Where's my opportunity? He'll probably give you 2 or 3 products. Don't have to adopt all 3 of them. Find the one that fits, and get outside your comfort zone. That's what I got.
All right. Well, I thank you again for the time today. I thank everybody that took the time out of their schedule to hear us talk about different things. And again, welcome all form of feedback from people here that have attended today. And thank you, John, especially for taking the time out of your schedule to talk with us today. It's very much appreciated. And
anytime.
And again, thank you, everybody. And we'll stop the presentation for now, and we'll see what happens for our next webinar. Okay. Thanks again. Bye for now.